Hey, welcome back to the Taking Chances podcast with Shaun Coe. I got a really special guest on today, and I've been waiting to do this one for a while. Got one of my best friends, podcast host from Radical Thoughts, pro Bellator fighter, and one of the sexiest 6'7" to 6'9" men, depending on what day you ask him, Jay Radick. What's going on, brother? How are you?
What's up, dog? How are you?
Not bad, man. It's been too long. So I always like to tell people, I feel like anyone that knows me has heard about you from a while. So, you know, just from someone in my life, you know, and the whole point of Taking Chances is to really elevate these stories. When I first met Jay was about, Jay, how many years ago was it? Six to 8 years ago? Because I honestly don't remember.
Bro.
It was about a decade,
honestly,
I feel.
To tell you the truth, it was probably like 10 years. It sounds crazy, but it was probably
It had to be at least 10.
Actually, no, that's a lie. No, is it really? No, actually, no, I don't think so. Maybe it's like 8. Yeah, maybe it's like 8. Something like that.
What was the coffee shop that we met at? Do you remember the name of the coffee shop? It wasn't the one we loved in Philadelphia.
It's not even there anymore. So I don't know. Yeah, like it closed down a few years ago. But it's up the street from like my house. So I forget what it was called, but yeah, it was just up the street. And I was in there. I forget what happened. I was just in there. I do work. You know, I'm just on my laptop, just doing work up the street, and then
like this, just so you know. I don't know if you guys can see me, but Jay doing work. I walk into doing the wings out, taking all the power in the
Is that
in
what
the
it
coffee
was?
shop.
Is that what it was? I don't know. I'm a big guy.
Jay's body was filling up a 5 by 10 little coffee shop full. Yeah. So when I walked in, I saw Jay sitting in the back there, and I was looking for, you know, just a place to work. And I see this beautiful man just leaning back, kind of like leaning back, and had all the charging blocks by there. And here comes my 5'5", maybe 5'8" stuff with my heels on, walking by. And I'm like, "Excuse me, sir, could I please use your power?" And I remember Jay, because I don't even know if I still have the video, but I looked over on his laptop, and my first thought was, what a douchebag this guy probably is. Like, look at him, just so full of himself, taking up all this space like the only outlets. And I go to plug in, and I look over at his laptop, and I noticed the backdrop was the same background I had. It was the leader boss. It was a different version, remember? But the leader is pulling and the boss is pushing, kind of yelling. So that sparked a conversation for us that was, I would say, a chance encounter. And whether it was 8 or 10 years ago, Jay's been one of my best boys since that day on. And one of the things I like to talk about is, and especially having Jay here, is I feel that when like energy finds like energy, it just happens to attract. And Jay's been someone that's been a meteor of my life that's really impacted me in so many positive ways. So just to get his story here and to start to talk to you, Jay, it's going to be great. But what have you been up to, man? The last time I saw you, it was just right after the start of the pandemic, right? So I think we were out playing in Colorado for a couple months, but I haven't really talked to you too much since then. So what have you been up to?
Honestly, man, for a while, I was really trying to figure out how I was going to transition, like everybody else. Pandemic kind of threw a monkey wrench in my whole plan. So I was trying to figure out what was going to happen with fighting. I was trying to figure out if I should move to a new city, join a new gym, you know, and also I was trying to figure out how I was going to transition because, you know, I do like strength and conditioning training and personal training and stuff like that. And I've been trying to, you know, build my brand and everything. And I was in the process of maybe moving, maybe switching out of training into other things. So I was actually thinking about coming to Colorado at that time. And since then, I've kind of solidified exactly the direction that I need to take everything and how I can build something a little bit more like sustainable, even through possibly like another worldwide event, another, you know, pandemic, something that's going to be bulletproof no matter what happens. So that's all I've been really doing this whole time. And then training and fighting, obviously. I'm still looking to this year to try to get a couple more fights in real quick. As long as my body holds up, like I'm just going to keep fighting. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like who I am now.
How's
it's
it?
Just like what I do. So.
Well, I feel that too, Jade. I mean, obviously, for me training my background, I think there's some things that just kind of grab a hold of us as much as we grab a hold of them. And I would say that's one endeavor that's, even if I'm not physically still doing it, I think the mentality's there. But talk to me about that, Jay, because I think, you know, I know how you live your life. And I just think, you know, sitting back here, how does someone like yourself, even, especially during the pandemic, how do you fit in being an entrepreneur, owning your own business, giving as much time as you do to your clients. Cause I see your videos, man. I see people giving testimonials. You actually care, but then you're fitting that in while still being so in tune with the rest of the world that's going on. And you're a pro fighter. Like, so how do you handle all that? I mean, is there some secret sauce that you got? I mean, how are you approaching your life so differently from what most people are doing, I guess?
What's crazy is that until the pandemic, I didn't even like I didn't realize how different I was, I guess, is the way that I should say it. Like I didn't realize how much differently I was living my life until the pandemic hit, because once it hit, I started noticing like the way people were reacting and how I don't want to like insult anybody, but like it seemed like people had no concept of what to do, how to do it. It seemed like everybody was just falling apart and
just flailing, right?
I realized that, yeah, just kind of like flailing and because it was just so, in the beginning, obviously, like that's just what it was. We didn't really know what was going on. But at some point, I just started to notice that everyone seems to be kind of just like lost here. And
yeah,
it wasn't a lot of people that were trying to find direction, trying to find some kind of way through this, even if it was hard, just find some kind of way to get through. And anyway, long story short is that I realized that I'm clearly doing something different. And then after I started to realize, I'm not, and then you got like friends like you too, like I have a lot of friends that are a little bit more open-minded, choose to take a little bit more risks, which is kind of cool that this is your podcast now, taking chances. Sorry. But
yeah, don't worry. Well, take chances, make moves, live life. It was just too long to fit in, I've been screaming at
that's
you
how
for a decade.
that's kind of how we started clicking in the beginning. I really like see that now. Like you're right, the energy is just the same, and we just kind of picked it up off top. But I guess the answer to your question is a long time ago. I decided that the most important goal to chase was actually just becoming a complete human being, if that makes sense. Like
it makes perfect
realized
sense,
that,
man. I love it.
Yeah, people tend to fall into certain careers or certain life paths, or and I don't feel like they always end up being something that's going to be fulfilling or something that's going to make you feel like, like you've accomplished something that's going to, in the end, it always seems to maybe just like not be the payoff that you were looking for. I see people who get into relationships, I see people who get into careers or whatever. And then, as time goes on, time always tells how much you really believe in what you're doing, how much you truly get from
exposes the truth.
this endeavor. And in time, like everything's going to come out. So, I chose a long time ago because I used to look at older people a lot for some reason. And, I used to actually spend time with older people. I used to listen to them, and like people's regrets later on in life were always the same. And I just kind of made a choice that no matter what happens, when I get to be in my 60s, 70s or whatever, I'm never going, I refuse to allow myself to look back and say like, I wish I would have X, or, I wish I would have, I wish I would have taken that chance. And now I'm just here, like I don't really, to tell you the truth, I don't really have a plan necessarily on like what I'm doing. My thing is more like I'm just going to stick to what I know. And over time, that's like worked for me. Like just sticking true to like my beliefs, sticking true to what I think is most important as a human being, and then going out into the world and finding other human beings like you, like some of my other friends that also believe the same thing. It seems to be a much more, it's a lifestyle that's much more conducive to overall happiness, overall gratitude, overall, fulfillment. So
full health and wellness too. I think, is it safe to say too, Jay, I think, because I was on the phone, obviously, when Jay and I reached out to each other at the start of the pandemic, and I'm not one that's going to pretend to know what's going on, but I knew that everything kind of stunk to high heaven, right? And I know that we're living through one of the largest transitions of mankind, and even upwards of things. And this should be another episode for us. Just like things like Chat GPT coming out and some of the stuff that's going to impact. And I think you look back into the 1918s and the coming of any kind of modern technology, whether it was telephones or any kind of transition that really changes the short form of communication for the human being experience. I think we're living through that currently. And when Jay and I first hopped on the phone, it was more that there's a lot of distractions going on right now. That's the thing that concerned me. And I remember Jay and I were taking about 10 days to reset, so to speak, in the nature of Colorado, and ended up being a couple months during that transitional phase when the world was first opening up. But I remember the conversations we were having then too, Jay, and it was just like, the whole world is so freaking distracted right now. Like what the fuck is really going on here? And what I've seen personally over the last 2 years, and obviously the injuries I was going through when Jay and I first linked up on that Colorado trip. I was struggling with a fear of heights, so I got into climbing, became a certified climbing guide, popped my shoulder out, had the surgery there. But when we were doing this endeavor in Colorado, I just remember, like, this is when I started skydiving, and at the time I was really struggling with losing control, and I think we all were. But for me, that was kind of the same endeavor where I came to the same conclusions like Jay did of, and I don't want to quantify this for you, Jay, but ultimately you decided to take a chance on yourself. And what I heard you say is that you've got such a foundation that you don't have to know your A to B completely. And I think so many people that start a business get lost in that, right? Like, I don't have every little plan figured out, but I remember Jay sitting next to me when I was telling him about skydiving, and it's the same mentality Jay has with fighting or anything that him and I have gotten into. And it's, okay, so you're going to go be a skydiver, Coe. So your brain instantly goes to, what are the steps and processes so I become the best skydiver, right? And I think it's the discipline, Jay, that you have, and the discipline, like the kind of folks that we're tied around, that it's just, it doesn't matter. I don't care what Jay's thrown into. I know that if Jay's thrown into the worst case scenario, Jay's going to come out fine. And I gravitate towards people like that during times like this. But,
yeah.
I mean, does any of that kind of resonate for you, Jay? I don't want to sum it up, but I remember like the emotional feeling I had when you and I were both.
Yeah. We're well.
There we go. I remember the emotional feeling I was having when you and I were both kind of having that conversation.
Honestly, this is actually funny because, like, I'm in the fitness industry, and this is a term that's been overused, but fitness is not, in my opinion, my belief is that, like, fitness is all encompassing. It's not about the gym. It's not about just your body, like being fit, or the term fitness actually means to just be capable. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
the that's the reason why.
It.
You can be physically fit, but like fitness is also just a general term for just being capable at something, or being being able to position yourself into something that you can flow with, you can be efficient at accomplishing or doing. So honestly, this is the reason why I think I kind of got into fitness, is because I just have this mindset, and I think that being capable as a human being is the thing that we're all looking for. It's
100%.
not, and you can start, and you can start with your body. I think everyone should start with their body. I think it's the easiest way. It's like the least, like the barrier to entry is much easier than other ways. Like if you try to go psychologically or emotionally, it's much harder to kind of, do the hard work and get a clear path on how you're going to succeed. But if you start with your body, you will gain the tools to do it in other areas, your mind, your emotions, your spirit, whatever. But I really do believe that being capable is what we're all searching for. And then with capability, with, like knowing that you can survive anything, knowing that you have been through something tough, knowing that, you do have people around you that are like-minded, and you have faith that, this is a real thing. I'm not alone.
Right?
Yeah, it gives you confidence. That's how you get real confidence. Confidence doesn't come from words. Confidence comes from experience.
Action.
That's the only way. Yeah. There's no other way to have true confidence. Any confidence that comes from talking and analyzing, this is all fake. This is all synthetic. It's all temporary. It
And
won't last.
I want to hop in on that too, because I think that's really what the world's suffering from the most right now. You know, we've got social media, which is great. It's bringing us all together, but you have so many people out there just living with two sides of it: imposter belief and then the fake it till you make it kind of world. And what I see in both sides, whether it's male or female, is that person builds so much insecurity into them that their behavior becomes toxic, right? And if I had to quantify like the total idealism of the West right now, I think that's where we're at. It's like the individual is so empowered because now everything else that's being told to us is that we're actually so weak. So on both sides of the crazy politics, and again, I mean, we don't like to talk politics too much on the show, but what I can tell you is I feel that politics are a distraction. And I know that the extreme right and the extreme left are not the largest population. And that massive middle ground, folks that think like you and I, is not represented right now. But I think, you know, kind of going into some of the things Jay said, and I wrote down so many notes here, it's the only way to build confidence into yourself is from failure, right? And the only way to really build confidence into success is to fail forward. I mean, I know Jay's been a fighter. I know in all the endeavors I do, the first time I climbed, I didn't really expect to be the best climber. But I think so many young folks out there in society today says, look, we're always seeking perfection, right? But perfection doesn't exist. It should be an ideal that we're reaching towards. But then these younger folks get into today's society, and it's like as soon as they get out, they try something once. And if it doesn't work, number one, they'll either quit on their dreams. But even worse than that today, I feel like this is some of the culture that's been bubbling up a little bit, right? I mean, I can just tell you from having the courage of stepping out, having my own business, being on my own, my group of friends looks very different. And actually the guy sitting across from me is the person that taught me what a benefit that was. About 10 years ago, when I was first getting out on my own, I remember calling you, Jay, and being like, dude, I don't understand why all this stuff is happening to me, you know, so on and so forth. They're all kind of falling off. And Jay just said something really simple to me of like, look, man, you've built your life into a filter, and people that are not qualified enough don't live here. And it was just such a profound thing to me, Jay. I don't even know if you remember saying that to me, but that sentence has stuck with me to today like it was yesterday. And I'm assuming that that was built into you as well, right? I mean, I'm assuming, and I know you so well, but I don't know if I've ever asked you this. Like, how did you come to that conclusion? Because I feel like people have potentially let you down before in the past as well. And how do you deal with that?
Well, I'm a stoic.
Right into the tough one.
Yeah.
There you go,
like,
baby. Yeah.
I'm a stoic, first of all. So like, you know, it's weird because people are like talking more and more about stoicism now. Everything's becoming so like mainstream now, and it kind of like sucks
Comes
because
back.
like I've just been a certain way. Yeah, like I've been a certain way for so long, but then you know how it is. Something catches fire, starts trending. Everybody wants to jump into it. Nobody's really kind of like living it, but they're talking about it a lot, trying to fake it till you make it or whatever.
Yep, they don't know why, but
yeah, they don't know why they're doing it, but it sounds cool, and they're just gonna try to like, you know, mimic it essentially. But yeah, you know, like I've had a crazy life, man, and I've been through way harder things than most people I think would be able to handle, I guess. You know, I feel like we kind of reached a point in society where it's been normalized to be weak. It's been normalized to be a victim. And it changes, you know, like groupthink is a real thing. So it starts to change the overall dynamic of an entire city, an entire, you know, country. And then now, you know, with us all being connected through the internet, it just becomes much more like a widespread, almost like thought virus, that it's okay to be weak, it's okay to be a victim, and don't try to get stronger, don't try to get better. And even if they don't say that directly, they're encouraging people to be weaker. They're encouraging people to do less. And I don't know, man. I really think that, you know, people are just going to people. You know, humans are always going to human. So I don't look at someone who let's say like does me dirty or lets me down or whatever. I don't look at it in terms of like, oh my God, how could this happen to me? Or why would you do this to me? Because then you take the power away from yourself, and you start trying to pull some kind of answer from somebody else's mindset. You're trying to pull an answer from some kind of like, you know, some kind of you're creating an equation that you can't figure out. There's no way for you to to generally go in and understand all someone else's trauma and all the journey that they're on and why they would do X, Y, or Z. But we believe that that's the way we've kind of normalized that should be the way that you should process things that happen to you. And in my opinion, that takes away your own power. And people, I think we need to get back to just focusing on what we can do instead of trying to overanalyze what everyone else is doing. Because if you barely know yourself, if you barely know what you're doing, why you're doing it, if you can't manage your own, and this gets a little bit into spirituality, but we could talk about that later. But
I love it. Keep going, man.
But
Keep
if you
going.
can't, if you can't manage yourself and you can't be comfortable just with yourself, it's impossible for you to be comfortable with anybody else. If you're not comfortable with all of your own actions, it's impossible for you to be able to manage and figure out why everybody else is doing what they're doing as it relates to you. This is just the way that I see it. So
no, I mean, and I think even if people don't see it that way, Jay, it's the way the world is, whether you want to fucking see it or not. And I think that's why folks like you and I have had some success too, because this is a very different story, but very similar to Jay's too. I learned from physical fitness and physical endeavors, whether it's fighting, climbing, that there is an exact cause and effect in this world. Whether I want there to be a cause and effect does not fucking matter, right? I mean, the universe does not care. And I kind of sum everything up to a book that I know Jay and I've talked about. And what's been profound for me is this is a book I've given to almost every person I care about in my life. And it's Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, right? But the general principle in The Alchemist is that when you walk in tune with the universe, and that number one, we all have a calling. It's that little voice in your head right before you go to sleep. It's a little voice in your head right before you wake up, and it's nurturing you towards your dreams or your desires. And that's where things get cluttered, though, especially in modern day, especially for men. I would say for men and female out there, but for the men out there, listen to me. The things that you desire are probably not going to lead you to be successful. Doesn't mean you don't want them and you don't need them, but our desires are oftentimes what leads us towards our limitations and our fears. Like for me, definitely afraid of heights 10 years ago, Now, the most rewarding things I get today are when I've summited a mountain or exited a plane. Number one, to kind of go back to what you said, Jay, is do you know how funny it is now when I sit in a boardroom with a geriatric old CEO who thinks that he is going to fucking intimidate me with words when his words aren't even backing up facts? Because so much of this posturing takes place in business now. And what I can tell you, Jay, is like, this made me very dangerous. Knowing that someone like Jay could dismantle me in seconds in the mat, but I still like to go in there and let Jay do that once in a while. Physically, It just made me, but it makes everything else that I do in my surrounding world just seem so much easier. And I don't want to speak for you, Jay, but those are the similar things I hear you say. And when we became friends, it was like, look, there's so many stories out there, and what Jay was summing up is what scares me the most. Look, I left the United States 2 years ago to expand my business. What I was really trying to do was put myself under more jurisdictions. One of the things I've been talking a lot about, Jay, and our background was similar. I was a personal trainer. I awoke 10 years ago and I found myself in a prison. And that prison I found myself in was my body. I was a fat, gelatinous guy. I mean, and I showed you pictures, Jay. You only knew me as a fitness guy, but fast forward, then I awoke in another prison. And that prison was the American dream, right? So I had this high paying job in corporate America. I worked in every city, but I never saw my family. I had no relationships that really mattered. I wasn't balanced, So again, I think specifically in the West, Jay, as I was saying, it's like one of the problems that we have in the West is, ultimately, as I kind of see things, is as much as our desires are things that we tend to chase after, they oftentimes end up being our limitations, at least in my own experience, some of the things that I've seen. What are your thoughts?
I mean, honestly, that's kind of the basis of like what I do for a living, like with training and with people who are like trying to lose weight or trying to get stronger or whatever. Like the only things that are stopping them are really the things that they're just chasing, that are kind of like either like things that they're doing for self-medication, or things that they're doing for like escapism, or things that they're doing to kind of like get out of their reality, and it kind of works against them making any progress in their reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's people have and for me, I see this in both fitness, spirituality, any kind of personal endeavors, but it's also the desires, but that personal story that people start to tell themselves and then believe in, like I know when I was training clients, it's like, if I heard any of that negative speech, like, oh, I'm fat or I'm never going to get there, like, hey, maybe these things are true right now, but that doesn't define you, and especially in business, like, I think a lot of times, like, fuck, man, I have to fail to figure out how to win. And if I was paralyzed by those failures, I would never be doing anything. So it's kind of a weird place where we're at these days.
Yeah, fear is paralyzing for people, and like even fear that's not like present, but possible future fear is what stops people from even trying. So like that's the real problem. The real problem is that not wanting to take the L. Like people like you and me were willing to take a L. We're willing to take a L just so that we can like move forward. But most people just want to keep moving forward, taking no L's. If you know what I mean. So
and it ties in a lot with, as much as I love reading, and I wish I was someone that could take more action from what I've learned. But for me, like, I just see a lot of people today, like, if you don't take action with what you learn, like use those for some boundaries and to build some thought process up. But for me, it's the ability to take action. That's the endeavor of actually educating me, right? Like, if I don't test out my modalities, like if I've got this idea, whether it is for a personal training client or whether it's for a business plan, and I have all these great ideas, but I'm paralyzed because, oh my God, what if I do this and I hit go and it doesn't work? And I think what I want most people to realize is that's likely to happen. Like that's part of the process. Like, hit go and fail, but learn. It's not really a failure. It's like, okay, where was I off base just a little bit here? And how could I make this better? And I've seen you do that in all of your endeavors as well. But I don't think a lot of people realize, I mean, Jay, and I don't want to speak for you again here, but I'm assuming there's a certain amount of fear that you carry with you, even in competitions. I mean, I'm assuming that you're probably using that to motivate you for future actions, but do you feel that? I know you're stoic, but like, do you acknowledge that as like an emotion inside of your body for any of these kind of trainings you do?
I mean, I'm a little different when it comes to like, if we're talking about fighting, if we're talking about MMA and that, like, I'm a little different when it comes to that. I don't really like, I'm more, my fear is all usually in the training, but like when it comes to the actual match, like I don't really have any fear at all, if that makes sense.
I think I know what you mean, but I want to see if I can help extrapolate on that, because I think a lot of people can benefit from what you're saying. So are you saying that if you're not prepared right, you'd be afraid that you didn't train enough, but when it actually comes to the event, that that everything's kind of done and it's like whatever is going to fall is how it's going to fall because the preparation is there?
Yeah, because there is no guaranteed path, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
if you can just accept that fact, then in my
You have
opinion, your most intelligent, like the most intelligent way to approach any kind of endeavor is to figure out all the ways you could potentially lose and then get to work on closing those gaps and
Yep.
that's the scary part, because you have to admit to yourself that I'm bad at this, or I need to work on that, or this is potentially a huge problem, and you basically are working on defense first, whereas like it seems like everybody else just wants to go offense first, and then they don't really understand the way, all the ways they might lose. So by the time you've spent enough time, by the time you've spent enough of your energy closing those holes and in your game and making sure your defense is extremely tight, then you're kind of you give yourself kind of like the permission to be a little bit more confident and give yourself the permission to go out there and actually just try your best and see what the result is without being like emotionally attached to this, like, or emotionally like
Well, you've already accepted it's almost like you've already accepted the fact that, hey, the outcome of this might not be desirable, but because I've accepted that fact, I'm going to take the action to prepare myself as much as possible for when this event happens, that I can kind of, and I don't want to say
I could just
let it go.
Yeah, just let it happen. Yeah, because this is kind of a little bit more of like a philosophical thing, but I mean, we're kind of like super anxious all the time because we're so like cerebral, like everything is just, it's just like everything we do now is just everything's mental. Everything's trying to process 100,000 different factors so that we can get the outcome that we want in life. And there just is no way we don't have enough bandwidth to calculate all the possible things that might go wrong or might go right. The only thing you can really do is focus on yourself. And if you put 100% of your effort into yourself and what you're capable of, then whatever happens outside of you doesn't really matter anymore, because you are essentially the best version of yourself that you can be on that day or in that meeting, or you know what I mean?
Yep. 100%. And I think it's it's similar too, like the things that terrify me. I found myself too in times of like going through in climbing endeavors or in skydiving, it was the redundancy of like gear checks that when my monkey brain was going crazy, right? So you're riding in a plane about to exit it and I'm terrified of heights. So the brain starts to go crazy, but giving that brain something very systematic to kind of walk on, like, okay, let's say shit happens here. Let's go through our emergency procedures. Find red, grab red, find silver, pull red, so you're kind of walking through like, if these things happen in a split second, but it's similar for me, but different at the same time, because I've competed before too. I honestly think the walking out, I was a younger man when I was competing in your world, and I don't think I had the maturity to deal with the emotions as much, to be completely honest.
That's a big thing too. Yeah. The maturity. Yeah. Emotional maturity.
Like I almost wish I had found climbing younger and then tried to compete in fighting, because I think it would have helped me. And again, my story evolved the way it was supposed to. All of those endeavors that I put myself into ultimately, like you said, helped me become a better version of myself. There were certainly aspects of myself throughout all those endeavors that I didn't like. I definitely didn't like how catty I could become or bitchy, like when I was training for a fight, because again, that anxiety was there. Similar things would come back up when you're going for a climb, and it was ultimately it was almost putting myself in a conversation, like transposed outside of myself, but reflecting on how parts of me viewed, and when I reflected on them, I'm like, oh dude, like, that's not the best version of you, but it enabled me to have like a paradigm to work on those aspects, and I think like just going about it consistently has built a lot more confidence. So, and Jay, go ahead. Sorry about that.
I think just becoming the best version of yourself is kind of the only goal that's attainable, like trying to make sure that everything goes right will never happen. You know how it is. Any entrepreneur knows that like there is no such thing as just jumping in and everything's well. It's really just trying to manage problems as best you can. And that's how it is with any new thing that you're going to try, or any really difficult thing that you're going to try. But in the end, I think the real problem is that people don't want to try difficult things. That's where we're at now where people just don't want to try difficult things. Yeah. And they don't understand the benefits of trying, not even like succeeding at difficult things, but just trying something difficult it's hugely beneficial. Like your mental health, your emotional health, everything improves if you just try difficult things. And they're proving this with neuroscience now. They're proving how the brain works. And this is all like documented now, but we're still stuck in this idea that we should, like you were saying earlier, like fit into this like narrative of like the American dream, or this is the way you're supposed to do your relationship. This is the way you're supposed to get your education. This is the way, blah, blah, blah. Whatever happens at the end of the day, it seems like the overwhelming majority of people are just not happy because they have taken an entire road that was avoiding hard things, rather than the people who dive into the hard things and then win or lose, they come out stronger, more confident, and much more capable as complete humans. You know what I mean? And not just, stuck in these ruts of maybe anxiety and depression, or feeling like you don't have purpose, or not feeling like you did a lot with your life, because that's the void that will always be there if you're always trying to stay away from, or you're always trying to prevent yourself from entering into anything that may possibly be difficult.
Yeah. I mean, so many people are trying to walk through this life, obtaining everything that's entitled to them, with coming out just clean as a church on Sunday, and I think it's just a little unrealistic. So many of the young folks, not even necessarily young, I don't mean age, like let's say infant into their like entrepreneurial business or trying to grow their career. I just find, and I don't want to say that people are weak today, because I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I just feel that everyone thinks or is starting to believe that things are going to come pretty easy. And just because I put effort in for a day, X is going to happen. And I watch a lot of folks, like, it's funny. Everybody will celebrate the overnight success, but they don't see them grinding for the 10 to 15 years that when you just notice them, that was the end result of a lot of consistency.
That's what we base our model on. That's what people are basing their own story on. And they're like, oh, I want to be like that. I want to just like be nothing. And then all of a sudden something. Yeah. And it doesn't exist.
And I mean, I think the vision I have with all of this stuff of what I'm trying to do and educate now too, is more of just give a behind the scenes. Like, look, there's days where it's unbelievable how great my life is. There's other days where I really want to run away from some of the stuff that I've created. But ultimately, if I take it into balance, like, you have to be passionate about this kind of stuff and what you do, because you have to be able to take the right actions with your endeavors to say, is the life that I'm trying to build fucking worth this? And I mean, so many times I think people enter wanting to get that revenue, right? And like, you can get that revenue from almost anything, but if you're not passionate about it, you will not nurture your business, your endeavor, your fight game to the level that it needs to grow into what it can become. And I mean, and I think that's really just a paradigm shift. It's like, the thing I heard you say is enjoy the ride. If I can share this with everyone, man, like, when you get somewhere with your business, it's probably not going to feel as good as you think it's going to. That journey of getting there is what I remember. And kind of instantly, as soon as I get to wherever the hell that plateau is, it's like, okay, what's next? And just be aware of that. But if you're connecting to your really good passions of what makes you click as a human, again, like giving back, helping people stand on their own, and like really seeing what they can do with their own two hands, I think those are the things that make it easier for guys like you and I to kind of keep going after it day in and day out.
Yeah, I agree. You won't, I mean, I know you don't want to say it, but I'll say it. Like, the younger generation is just, they are weak. They are weak. And it's psychologically they are weak, and emotionally they are weak. But I don't want them, but it's not their fault. That's the difference. That's like the thing that I think people get confused. It's like, oh, you can't say people are weak. It's like, no, you can say people are weak. There are people who can't even curl a 10-pound weight. They can't even curl a 5-pound weight. That's fine. It's not like a good or bad thing. Being weak and is just what it is. It's just a state of being. Whether or not you want to be weak and someone calls you weak, this is where, like, it starts to get a little bit divisive. It's like, if someone doesn't want to feel weak, feel like people think they're weak, and you call them weak, now we got a problem. If someone's happy being weak and they're like, I don't want to be strong, or I don't want to be able to curl 150 pounds, like, that's their choice, and that's fine. It shouldn't be like, oh, you're weak and that's a bad thing. No, you're weak, and then the next question, like, if you can accept the fact that you are weak, then the next question is like, do you want to stay weak? You know what I mean? Do you want to stay emotionally weak? Is that something that you want? Because if that's what you want, then that's good for you, and you should be able to have that. Do you want to be psychologically weak? If you want that, you can have that, and that's your choice. No one can tell you shit. Like, that's your life. You do whatever the fuck you want. But for the people who are emotionally weak or psychologically weak, and they do not want to stay that way, unless we get to into this conversation and we get to the point where we can have that talk, then you're going to be stuck in whatever you're doing, and you'll never be able to find a way out. And this is kind of where, I know you were talking about, like, how there's like a growing sentiment now. There's kind of like this growing, like, idea that's going around where people just aren't feeling fulfilled, or they aren't feeling like,
people are disenfranchised just in general.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They're just left out.
Because society doesn't build an idea of you being important. Society builds an idea of you following the rules and following steps.
Yep.
And following steps eventually doesn't lead to you feeling fulfillment. It doesn't lead to you feeling like your life had a serious, like a purpose, or you had some deep drive that you wanted to accomplish or experience. It's just hedonism and quick pleasure and pay the bills, and just kind of like, don't say anything offensive. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the rules. That's just the box that you have to maintain. And the truth is, you don't have to do that. You don't have to live that way. You can take some chances, like you're trying to tell people. And once you do, or once you can get to the conversation with yourself and with other people about whether or not you want to stay the way that you are or not, and what your options are to get out of that place, then you can start making progress. But I personally, long story short, back to the beginning, I think that we're suffering from some kind of epidemic of like the environment that people are growing up in is allowing them to stay complacent. It's enabling people and kind of encouraging people to not strive for anything too much, to not give too much, like take too much risk in any way at all, but also really believe that you're going to be some kind of overnight success, like you said.
Well, and I think too, I mean, this might resonate with you in just the things as you're speaking, it sticks out to me is like when you can see things narrowly, you can see them broadly. And I'm, speaking about a book maybe you've read before, but in the comments that you're saying there, JT, like, I'm just curious. We grew up around the same time. We grew up in different areas, but I think in a similar way, in a similar fashion, with similar parents that raised us with similar values. Do you see a difference in how the kids are growing up today and maybe what's influenced it? And I know it's so obvious, but I think for you and I, like we've talked about this so many times behind the scenes, because I see a lot of that too. If I had to sum up everything you're saying there, Jay, I think right now society is creating people to like create a false narrative of like trying to get in the game. And they create this right before their dream, but they don't even know what the dream is. They're like, I want to follow these steps. I'll give you a prime example real quick. I won't use the gentleman's name. Coaching someone that has some content going out, very good content, younger in his career. And he had a conversation with me recently of like, look, dude, I'm modeling everything that Gary Vee's doing. I think some of my content is just as good as Gary Vee. What's the difference? And I just had to like lead it kind of slow. I'm like, look, man, you're not fucking Gary Vee. And right now, and what I mean by this is just calmly, like Gary Vee, before he started releasing a lot of content, drove Wine Library to 60 million in revenue. And it's not saying that you can't go live right now, but you're trying to speak with authority. It's like an 18-year-old relationship coach, right? Like, hey, you can tell me about what you're doing, but I don't know if you have that experience yet. And I see so many kids, and I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but so many people I see right now in any kind of space, like 35 and younger, a lot just don't seem to carry the authenticity that I hope that they would, because I don't think it's going to help them out as much. But I think it's that narrative you're talking about, Jay. I think they're almost being encouraged to follow like a cookie cutter plan, and they don't know really where they're trying to even get.
It is fake it till you make it. See, this is what I love about you, because like I have a lot of friends like this that are like, oh, I don't really want to say this and I don't want to say it, but like, you know me, like I'll say it. It doesn't, if this is what it is, and this is the conversation that we need to have, then we need to just put it on the table. And
with respect and love, right? I mean,
with respect and love. Yeah. It's not, it's not trying to put people down, but just to highlight, it's just self-awareness. This is all we're really trying to promote. We're trying to promote self-awareness. And sometimes you have to be aware enough that you fucked up, and nobody ever wants to or maybe you are on the way to fucking up. You just need to be aware enough to see where you are versus like where everyone else is. And you also need to be able to see where you are versus where you want to be. And sometimes where you want to be is not where everyone else is, especially for somebody who's an entrepreneur or that's trying to start a business. You don't want to be where everyone else is. Everyone else is trying to build something. You want to be in the category or in the area over there where people have already built something. And that is a very, very small area. So you don't want to be where the large group is. And until we can get out of this like attachment or this like addiction to being in the group and trying to FOMO, like replicate what everybody else, it's all FOMO. And this is what I was saying about like you were asking about the younger generation and the way they're growing up and everything. And it's like this. There are huge benefits. There are huge benefits to growing up and being younger in a time like right now. Okay. Yeah. Your access to information at such an early age and your integration directly into social media, and to now it'll be artificial intelligence and everything that's coming, your ability and your time and your energy and your like enthusiasm and your drive to just jump into all this technology, all of this stuff, like, and your desire to learn it all. This is like the best possible scenario for branding and marketing and building something for yourself, right? You have to have like all of that, right? But at the same time, there are so many options, costs. Well, there's huge costs to growing up in that kind of environment too. And one of the most like detrimental side effects of this scenario for these young people too is that they don't actually have, like you're saying, the authenticity, or they don't have the genuine passion. They never got to build that drive inside of themselves through trial and error, finding, like trying this out, realizing that wasn't it, trying something else. They just jump in from the beginning and they want to pretend like they're Gary Vee from the fucking beginning.
I mean,
And
just
you don't have, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but like there are great examples from this generation too. Like think about Mr. Beast, and Mr. Beast did something very similar to what we're talking about. That dude studied YouTube with 4 of his colleagues for a year and a half and just failed consistently and just figured it out until eventually he went viral. Now, what was great about Mr. Beast is he discovered his passion at 13. By the time he blew up, it still took that 5 to 10 years though of doing that fucking consistently and practicing his trade and getting better, having the humility to go in front of your audience and saying like, hey, what am I doing? Is this good or is this bad? But like, it's the same thing. So I just thought of that as you're saying it, because there are great examples out there that folks that have done this, but I think that same system of what made success was there. Accepted what I want to do, embrace it with humility, be humble enough to receive feedback. I mean, even the one thing you said earlier, like even in our friendship, there's been so many times where you've saved me from danger, right? And I think vice versa. I've actually been a good friend of like, hey, Coe, what the fuck are you doing right now? Do you really want to be doing this? Or Jay, like, think about this. And I think a lot of times, like my best friends aren't trying to keep me protected like an eggshell. My best friends are hitting on me like a fucking hammer, and I know we say this.
And making sure you're built.
Yep.
Yeah, making sure you're built in a way that you can withstand anything, like what's the old like prayer or whatever, like did Bruce Lee say it, or no, maybe it wasn't a prayer, maybe it was like a quote by Bruce Lee. He was saying like, don't pray for a good life, pray for like the strength to endure
to
really
endure
hard life.
Yeah,
and that's what a good friend, was that Bruce Lee?
Well, dude, I can tell you this. Since I've been doing podcasting, I've butchered so many quotes that I'm definitely going to get picked on YouTube. I combine a lot of quotes with other things that I get close, so I'm not even going to try to correct you in there. But I know it's a great one, and it's Buddhist if it's not Bruce Lee, so you're definitely close.
Yeah, it's either Buddha. Oh yeah, it was Bruce Lee. Do not pray for an easy life. Yeah, exactly. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Yeah, so like this, in my opinion, and especially with men, you need friends that are willing to
100.
to like just keep you in check, man, because like we have a different kind of scenario where we think like we have to just boom 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 nonstop, put your head down, go for it, whatever, and it's too easy to get lost along that path. I mean, it's too easy to run full speed in the wrong direction. So
you pulled me off that path several times, Jay. You know what I mean? You pulled me off that path. I mean, look, and I'll share this with people too, because I don't know how much I've said this publicly before, but around the time Jay and I were linking back up was the first time I went through a year of counseling, and it was the best thing I've ever done as a human being. Again, I had some things I was working through, and I had some patterns in my life getting closer to 39 that, let's just say, I had to call myself on my own bullshit eventually, right? And I think a lot of guys go through there. If you hear certain stories from partners or friendships and you've heard them enough, it's like, well, maybe this isn't always someone else, and maybe there's some things to reflect on. But I think even there, like, it was easier for me because I'm a type A guy. I owned a business, but even at the time, having a psychology degree, Jay, when I was going into it, it was easier because I was kind of at rock bottom at the time and I was losing everything. But it was still times where like my subconscious was checking me like I was a bitch, and I know that narrative is completely false. But I think a lot of people don't have that confidence to look at that little voice and say, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, we're going to change some things about ourselves and you're going to be okay. And you'll be here or not,
There's just levels of awareness, man. And this is going to go back into, like sometimes you and I would get into much more deep, philosophical and like spiritual conversations.
We'll never be on a 30-minute podcast.
Yeah, never. That can never happen because it's all connected. And if you think that it's just like, oh, I'm just going to do this, here's 2 tips or here's 5 tips on how you're going to build a perfect business in 2023. Like, it doesn't work like that. But
no, it doesn't.
But the most important thing to remember is that there are levels of awareness, and self-awareness is not one. We all use one term, but we can't consider it to be just one thing. Yep. It's a spectrum. Okay. And some people are kind of aware, and some people are hyper aware of themselves. They're hyper aware of their faults. They're hyper aware of their strengths. They're hyper aware of their environment. They're hyper aware of all of these things. And they are much more capable at navigating through tough things building on things that are a little bit easier for them, and creating and truly coming together and creating with all of their tools and all of the things that they have access to. So I think self-awareness is something that's a little it needs to be it's lacking, and it needs to be promoted more. Self-awareness is the only thing. I personally think, going back to the whole strength thing, that mental strength is the only strength. There's no real, it's the fundamental strength, you know, like there is no getting physically strong without the mental strength first. There is no becoming emotionally strong without the mental strength first, because emotions will just run you ragged. You know, if you don't have some kind of mental strength to be able to like section that off and to be able to figure out how you should go about dealing with this instead of just becoming like a victim of your emotions.
So spot on.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like it's just
and I got such a good life lessons with that too, Jay, in the last 2 years, just with the surgeries, because I think so many guys approach it this way too. And again, for me, I thought I'd fix so much by getting into shape and really my physicality, and I had, but like, dude, like I was laughing when you were talking earlier, that guy running away, that was me. Not running away from anything. I was running at everything, but it was kind of the same action, right? Like Mr. Coe stays so busy, I don't feel a fucking emotion. So don't worry about it, right? Like I'm just going to churn up good energy. And I think during the time is like when I finally slowed down, or those, you know, the shoulder injury was bad, but the ACL was terrible, you know, and you and I were hanging out in between. And that was the first time for 6 months, dude, I couldn't move. Like I was in bed for 12 weeks with my leg and an immobilizer being moved. And as much mental fortitude as I thought I had, I was really faced with my inner self for those 6 weeks were rough, man. And I mean, I went into one of the deepest of deepest depressions, but I was able to pull myself back out just from that too, of saying, hey, this too shall pass. I've been very successful. At times it passes. I've lost everything. That time will still pass. And I think to the points of what we're talking about too, is having that stability and that self-awareness keeps you safer as you're going through this paradigm of life, because nothing's guaranteed and everything's guaranteed kind of at the same time, you know, and it's just putting your best foot forward and really being in tune with yourself helps you make the best decisions. Had I not gone through that counseling before I went through that surgery, I don't know what that would have looked like, in all honesty. I don't think I would have committed suicide or anything like that. But at the same time, just having the courage to address that before I went through there, it made that transition a lot easier. And that 2 years was still rough. So I think a lot of people have ideas, and I think certain times in life, what we're seeing now is reality smacks them and they don't have the self-awareness. So we see a lot of just like flailing, you know, and that's when the emotions are grasping, or I'm lashing out at other people. You know, the Republicans hate the Democrats, like red hates blue, vegans hate other people. And all we're really doing is putting ourselves into small blocks where we feel secure and then attacking those other blocks. But if you really boil all that bullshit down to the individual, it usually comes from a sense of insecurity, because people that are really secure usually are not talking shit on other people. Even if someone bothers me, I really don't care, because they're not impacting me. It doesn't really bother me as much. So I agree with what you're saying, man. I think that self-awareness is key. Look, Jay, I could talk to you forever, bro. And I think we're going to continue. I know I'm getting you back on. What are some things that we can leave the guests for though, man? I know you've got some new fitness apps coming out. Your personal training's going huge. Can you drop some links so that the fans can follow you? I don't want to promote things you're not promoting yet, but I definitely want to promote what you want people to know about.
Yeah. The app's coming. Probably March. We'll get that officially launched. But just you know, my Instagram, Limitless One. And right now I'm just really trying to, the same thing you're kind of doing. I'm really trying to highlight in like fitness and in health, because I really believe, this is going to sound crazy, but I really believe that we're going to have a problem in the next like 5 years, 5 to 10 years, especially with the narratives around fitness, the narratives around health, and people competing.
Well, I just saw that, Jay. I don't want to speak for you, but I just saw that the U.S. Is now stating that a gelatinous body is just genetics, and there's nothing the individual can do. Right? So
man,
does that have you scared a little bit? Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Well, I'm not really scared, because you know, I know the truth, and I know why they're saying this, and I can see all of this happening. My thing is that, like, the reason why I'm even in this in the first place, the reason why I'm in fitness and not in another industry, I could have did pretty much anything. the reason why I chose fitness is because I genuinely have a deep belief in what it takes to master your body, what it takes to master your mind. All of this is directly connected. There is no one without the other. And I truly believe in, the idea that if you generally are anxious, or you're depressed, or you're physically unwell, whatever, if you're willing to try all these other things and you won't first try your body or do anything, on your own to take back control of your mindset, take back control of your health, take back control of your body, then I think that's going to be the way that's kind of the path to destruction for everybody. If we're all just going to go down this road of like, oh, you should just get surgery and take pills and there's nothing else that you can do. And I genuinely believe that, like I said, in the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to keep pushing this bullshit on people. And I just want to create something that, as this narrative keeps growing, that you're just a victim of genetics. Give them the option and prove, because I've already helped multiple people that were obese and had obese parents. I've already helped people lose 50 pounds, 75 pounds. Like, I've helped couples lose, like 150 pounds together. It's like, you can't lie to me, and you can't lie to the people that I helped. You can lie to people who don't really know any better, but you can't lie to me. So I just want to give people another idea, another option. And that's what that's what the goal of this app will be. And that's the goal of all of my training. And it's not just with, losing weight, but it's also with like nutrition and with people who are just trying to become physically more capable, whatever. But we really need to kind of reinforce this idea that you do have a choice, and you have some what's the word I'm looking for?
You can take some control of your life. Yeah. You've got more it's not just willpower, it's not just genetics, it's not just the only thing that matters is that you truly believe that you are capable of getting to a better place. And I just want to give people give people reinforcement, positive reinforcement in the idea that it does not matter where you are right now. It does not matter how low you think you are right now. We can get you to exactly where you want to be. And you just have to start. You just have to start.
Yeah. It's going to give you something that's a lot more lasting. You're going to have a much more lasting effect versus taking a pill or taking, like just resorting to any kind of like cheap, quick, money-making schemes that they're throwing at you to try to sell you on the idea that this is going to help you. And all it does is just kind of like take away from you psychologically. And,
it's everything we've been talking about, Jay. It's literally, it's exactly. Some of everything we've been talking about. Everything from broad and back down to narrow. Yeah. So, hey guys, we're gonna drop all of Jay's links down below. But if you want to get some really good inspirational, some top line training, some inspiration from the man himself, from a pro Bellator fighter, we'll drop all of Jay's socials. Jay, thanks so much for being on the show. Hopefully, we're going to try to work something out. We didn't share this with the fans, but Mr. Radick also lived in Bucharest before, so we're going to try to have a reunion because Jay's done multiple.
I'm gonna come back.
So, yeah, we're going to get him back out to Bucharest.
Yeah.
Jay, thanks so much for joining
Bucharesti.
Bucharest. Jay Pop.
All right, thank you.
The rest of the fans, we'll talk soon, guys. All right, be good.